Hello, everybody. I have cold brew coffee this week. My husband has been all about making the cold brew lately, and I've never had it at home where he's thrown, because I'm a splash of coconut milk sort of person. So we're cold brewing it this morning, but I feel like it's jingly because of the ice cubes. So welcome, welcome. Happy Wednesday. I almost forgot it was Wednesday. I feel off track this week. Like I don't know what day is what. But Wednesday's my work from home day. So I usually work home in the office. I'm home just doing things around the house. So today is wash all the lawn chairs day. Who else has great tasks they're doing today? Getting ready for the holiday weekend. We've got 4th of July here coming up. So it's going to be kind of a shorter week, I think, for a lot of people. And a lot of fun happening this week. So good morning, Tony, Robert, Susan. Hey guys, welcome. I got literally so many questions that what I usually do is, so I'll just print them off. So I make sure I address them. I've had so many questions. So I'm going to just dive into some of them. How do we change the stigma that death is something scary? Well, I think anything of unknown is always going to be scary. So when you approach anything new, it's scary. And because we're only going to do the death thing once, usually, the people that die and come back, but because we're only approaching it once, I think it will eternally be scary to everyone. What happens after we die, I don't feel like I can sit and worry about it because it's going to be what it is. So whether you're a believer, whether you believe in heaven or any afterlife or anything you believe in, you just have to have faith in that belief. And that will hopefully calm fears leading up to the moment. I think with some people, they're in so much pain because of their illness that maybe death to them is something they're looking forward to, a relief of some sort. And I've heard so many people say that. And so I think that there's just a lot to it. I can't really say we can change death from a living perspective. We can give a good experience when caring for your loved one who has died. And I think that can change the stigma of funeral homes and funeral directors and things like that. So hey, everybody, good morning. I'm doing pretty good. I'm battling the allergy season this morning too. I don't know if it's this dust storm or whatever it is that's coming in from across the ocean, but it's rough. Shelly's asking, when you're making arrangements, can you pay them as a beneficiary on an insurance policy? So this depends on some laws as well, because like the funeral home can't be a direct beneficiary on, say, your life insurance from your work or something like that. But through a funeral home, you can set up a funeral related life insurance that can go to then pay for your funeral. You would have a beneficiary that's somebody in your family, because if there's excess funds, the funeral home can't just keep them. They need to then give them to whichever family member has been designated. Have I done a 2-minute video on cosmetic lights? Yes, I have actually. So cosmetic lighting might actually be the name of it. 2 minutes on cosmetic lighting. Hey, JW, thank you. This is called I'm not doing my hair because I'm going outside to wash lawn chairs after this. Big sort of look. Placing coins. Paula, that's putting coins on your eyelids thing. I'll have to look into the history of that and if anybody still does it and kind of what the practice is for. So you're interested, Neo Sister says she's I'm assuming sister, interested in working for a funeral home, but don't have any experience, but always been interested in the business. I'm an older person. Is it too late? It's never too late. There's so many positions around a funeral home. I say this all the time, guys. You may be interested in working in a funeral home, but it doesn't mean you have to be a funeral director. There's so many aspects to the funeral home. There's evening staff that works visitation, and there's graphic staff, there's office staff, there's people who help take phone calls after hours, there's visitation workers, funeral workers, all sorts of things. So no matter your age or what you might be interested, you don't need to have funeral experience. There's not a lot of people who are going to have a lot of funeral experience going to work for, but it's phone presentation and professionalism and details and privacy. That's a huge one. So people who have worked in maybe the medical field, it's a good transition over because you've been working with privacy laws and HIPAA and things. We don't have HIPAA in the funeral business, but it's the same privacy and, confidentiality. And let's say, Jim Smith died from suicide. You don't go home and you're not talking to your, church ladies about, oh, poor Jim Smith died by suicide, because family may not let that information out at all. And if it gets out, it comes back to the funeral home staff. So things like that, if you can show that you have a history of, certain elements of what would be needed to work at the funeral home. I always say, if you're going to start building your resume, you've not worked at a funeral home, sit down and list all the characteristics of working at a funeral home that you would think would be so important. And then look at your work history and pull those things out and highlight them from the work you've done before. So maybe you worked for, I don't even know, if you worked in an automotive dealership, you handled volumes of phone calls, people that sometimes are not in the best moods, very upset. You handled them with tact and professionalism and a calm voice. You had great response from them for giving them a good customer experience. And, you can turn things so they do benefit wanting to work in the funeral home because they highlight those attributes. Oh, Fred, I'm so sorry. Your mom passed away end of last. I've been retired from the business for a while. My mom had been going downhill for over 2 years. I know what was going on. They did a good job. I'm so sorry, Fred. That's hard, I think, being in the business and then, kind of releasing the reins. Hey, Robert, good morning. Good to see you. You're an event planner for a pharmaceutical company. Perfect. That's all we are doing is planning an event. You would look, go, if you have a funeral home you're interested in working for, go talk to them and just see if maybe they have an opening, a part-time something. A lot of funeral homes now have banquet and reception and that kind of things. I mean, I know one funeral home that I used to do some work for, and they had one person who just came in, baked cookies and set up the reception area that would be setting out during visitation. So like it'd be cookies and water and coffee and things when guests came in. And that was her job all the time. It was very, on call. Other people work, doing they go pick up the catered food, set it up, host the reception, clean up and everything. So there's all these areas within the funeral home you may not quite think of right off the top of your head. Why are visitations at night? I've had a few visitations where the person was like a third shift worker. And so we did visitation in the morning from like 9 to 11. So that way, when people got off work, they could come over, kind of like their night schedule would then come over to hit the visitation. I think it's just tradition and people are off work at that hour and you come and you pay respects at that time. Fred, thank you for sharing about your mom and about your work. So you worked military and civilian within the funeral business. That's amazing. Yeah, isn't that cute? Everybody, so our dog, you've seen videos, if you've watched my videos of dogs, Ralph, and everybody always thought this was Ralph in these pictures. I have two of them. I have a winter scene, and then I have this water one. What is the best way to handle high emotions in the funeral home? Depends on the situation. So if you give me a specific situation, I'll tell you how I'd handle it. I lost my mom 11 years ago and her funeral traumatized me a lot, seeing her body. I'd like to thank you for your videos because now I'm not thinking of her as a corpse, but as of my mom. It gives me peace. Oh my goodness, Anna, that was so sweet. Have you ever prepared a Russian Orthodox funeral? I don't think I have ever done a Russian Orthodox. I'm trying to think in our different communities. I don't know if we have a Russian Orthodox church. We have a Greek Orthodox. I'll have to look and see if we have a Russian Orthodox church in our area, and maybe dig in and kind of look. We got a lot of happy birthday wishes too last week. So thank you guys for those. That was awesome. It was amazing. Usually you get my Facebook ones, but I got them coming at me from every which way with YouTube and Instagram, and then the business Facebook. It was unbelievable how many birthday things I got. There's only one natural burial cemetery currently in Michigan, truly, but you can always ask at your local cemetery if they would allow a natural burial. They just need to kind of sign off on it or vote as a board. Any plan to join TikTok? So last weekend I went to Traverse City, as you guys know. If you saw, I think I posted it on Instagram. Did I post it on Facebook? It was a photo of the funeral home from Traverse City. So I had to do a drive-by of that. But so I was in Traverse City with some ladies. We just went, we did a couple of wine tastings and just kind of hung out. But we talked about TikTok, and I said, I've never figured out Twitter. Like Twitter to me, I don't know why I can't figure it out. It makes me seem so old. And I haven't figured out TikTok. I don't even have it on my phone. I should probably just put it on my phone, but then I feel like it's one more thing that consumes my time away from my kids and my family. So I would love to do the dances because I'm a dancing fool. But yeah, I haven't figured out the TikTok yet. So TikTok is a tiny spy tool, Robert says. Jewish funerals. A prominent businesswoman in my community passed away. It was 3 days from her date of death until her funeral service. Since Jewish bodies aren't arterially embalmed, what is done to prevent an unpleasant decomposition odor from emanating from the casket? They wash the bodies, much like Muslims do. Is a type of disinfectant or deodorizer used that would keep the body fresh? If nobody was there with the deceased, we would probably place them in a cooler or, a cooling storage unit overnight, just to try and do what we could. We could always pack the person in ice, place like an ice cool tray under them. So there's different things we could do depending on the situation. To Kalkaska, Dennis. That's fun. Yeah, I was right by Kalkaska. Amanda, when digging graves in the children's part of the cemetery, what do they use? Same things. It just depends. Typically, they might just hand dig because they're probably not going to go down as far as they would an adult burial, but it's all laid out just like an adult. So it's all measured out. So they would just measure over and dig down. And it's the same thing, just on a smaller scale. How many cremations are permitted in a grave plot in Michigan? It depends on the cemetery. Most cemeteries are 2. I've run into some that allow 4, but there's also those that allow 8. So it really just depends. The biggest thing is the headstone that they only allow. A lot of them only allow 1 headstone. So you'd really have to plan ahead as to what you were going to do in terms of marking that grave space. Thanks, Tony. Well, maybe I need to just be cool and get on TikTok then. When a body is embalmed for a medical school, is regular embalming fluid used? Oh, I forgot. I was going to check with somebody from the mortuary school where we did all the medical school cadaver preparations to find out for sure what was in that solution that we were using. So I'll get back to you guys on that. And then someone recommended a book called 9 Years Under, Coming to Age in an Inner City Funeral Home by Sherry Booker. Have anybody read that book? You'll have to tell me about it. All right, I'll have to look into that one and come back to it. What's your favorite cemetery in Michigan? Ooh, it's a good question. There's a lot of cemeteries I like. There is one near me that I always, so where I'm living now, I thought it was always so far away from everything. When you're younger, it's always, every drive is so far. And the cemetery near me now, it's called Messer Cemetery. It's a family cemetery. It's behind what used to be a little bitty church building. And it's all family or somebody who knows the family that's buried there. And I always loved it because it was just kind of this random little cemetery. So I love little random cemeteries, but I also love the huge, hilly ones. So there's one in Kalamazoo called Riverside, and it's just the old and the hills, and I love it. Cemeteries are awesome. Hey, Joe from Australia and James in England. I worked with a woman who practiced Buddhism. I went to her funeral at her temple, and it was interesting learning their religious beliefs. It is. I love other religions. It's so fascinating to see what others practice and what others believe, especially in loss, kind of what they lean on. Fred, that's my dream, is to go to the Dover Air Force Base mortuary. I worked there during the Beirut, LE, and Grenada. We processed over 250 remains. That was the first time dealing with wartime remains. I bet you have quite the stories and experience. Yeah, that's one of my body farm guys, Dover, and then working like DMORT, disaster response, eventually, hopefully. How long can you store a body before open casket service? I mean, I've done month. It really just depends. I've been watching a Hindu cremation. That is something else. Yeah, there's a lot of, so in our country, there's one open fire like cremation place, and that's out in Utah, I believe. And I'd love to go visit there just to see kind of how they do things. And, you watch some of the cremation services over in India and how much a part of in the town it is. I mean, everybody can witness and see, and it's right there. And that really fascinates me because here we hide. Funerals are so hidden, like just take mom, cremate her, and then we'll take her home and put her on the shelf or something. And in so many other cultures and communities, it's out there and everybody's a part of it and everybody sees what's going on, which is how I think it should be. Like, I think everybody should partake in a community member's loss because they were lost from the whole community, not just from a household. And so I think it's important to, as a community and as a culture, kind of take part in that loss and support each other. But do you have to aspirate more than once? Every once in a while, if the person starts purging or if we get tissue gas and pressure builds up, and it's really fascinating. Like, you'll aspirate and you start dressing the person, you may do something, you come back 2 hours later. And so you aspirate, the stomach goes down, and then you come back later and the stomach's back up. You can see the up and down of the person's abdomen as that gas is kind of building back up in their stomach. So you aspirate again, try and get all the fluid back out. Sometimes you can put more cavity back in, but usually what it's going to do is what it's going to do already. It's already going to have worked its magic. But sometimes you can re-aspirate and maybe find a pocket of fluid of, blood or something in the abdomen that you hadn't hit originally aspirating. And then you can get that out and then maybe reintroduce more cavity fluid at that point, then go back later and remove the cavity fluid. Because it kind of just works up to a certain point and then it's done, and it's done its job. So you can reintroduce more if you want. I'm planning on going to Worsham in September this year and have a few questions. During your apprenticeship, were you ever called out in the middle of the night to assist in embalming or preparing a body for visitations? Oh yeah. So it all depends on the funeral home you work at. Some funeral homes don't go out at night. They have a removal service that does their night removals, and then they'll call the families in the morning to, see if they need to be embalmed, to set up times. So it just depends who you work for. You may work for somebody who goes in the middle of the night themselves, does the embalming in the middle of the night if they've had a conversation with the family, like at the house or nursing home. So it really just depends. But yes, middle of the night, many, many, many times. And that's your second. How often have you been called out in the middle of the night? Too many. When it comes to the smell of the deceased, are there ever times in the beginning when you thought you were going to be sick? How do you handle the smell, and do respirators work best? I think respirators work amazing when you wear them for, every time you're in the prep room, and then maybe you go in the prep room and are talking. Like, I'll go in and maybe talk to somebody else who's embalming and just chat with them for like 10 minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, this does smell, like the chemicals and the body smells and things. You forget almost how strong all the smells are once you've masked them for so long with a respirator. But sometimes the smell of the poop and, if purge comes out, that's really caustic, very acidic. Sometimes that'll kind of hit you, decomposition, things like that. It just depends on your trigger. It's all personal. Some people have never gotten sick. I've never thrown up in the prep room, and sites have never made me throw up yet. So some are gross, definitely, and give me the squeak, kind of the willies, but no throwing up. Does dead bodies involuntary move by muscle spasm? Not much. The most I've ever seen is like a pinky move a little bit, or like a pointer finger, but not much. Do you casket the family picks out from your display, or do you order it from a company? A lot of funeral homes don't have full caskets in them, or don't have storage of full caskets, depending. It takes up a lot of room. It takes up a lot of overhead. And so as a business, it's a better model that you don't store a lot unless you've bought in bulk, like 1 or 2 caskets that are maybe common ones that people choose. So we order, and we can get them next day. We could get them same day if we really needed to. If a person passes away and they get cremated, can they be made into a fishing lure that their family can use? You can do pretty much about anything. I don't know how to make fishing lures, but if it's a resin type, you could work the cremated remains into the resin. I would imagine there could be a company already doing that, but I think that's a fun idea. The only thing is, how often do you lose a fishing lure? That's my luck. I would cast out for the first time with part of my dad, and I would catch it on a weed, break it off, and he's gone forever in the, that part of him in the weeds, which maybe that's where you want him eventually anyway. So I'm sure there's a company out there that could do it. I want you to do no more aquatic cremation videos. Well, when I go to St. Louis, I'll be touring a water cremation facility. Thank you, Tiffany. You're so sweet. Hey, Angela in England. What are some questions one should ask if looking to job shadow a funeral home, especially if looking to see if they're a good fit for you? Well, if you're job shadowing, you're just there for a short period of time. They don't need to be a good fit for you. You just need to shadow and see what they do. So you don't need to meet up with, anything. Just go see what you can experience. Pull out all information you can from shadowing with them, move on to the next shadowing opportunity or on to the next job. You don't really need to ask a lot of questions. Just see if you can shadow. Did she have a fall, Fred? That would be the main reason. Or if she was exposed to maybe COVID or something, those would be the 2 things that I would think that she would be put on a hold for. He said his mom was 82. She died in Phoenix. She was put on an ME hold, which is medical examiner and possible autopsy. So do my children ask about my job? They do ask questions. They think it's fun to go to work. And if we walk through the care center, or they walk through anywhere that there's maybe somebody in a casket, and they always peek and look and ask questions if they want to. But I'm pretty blunt, and we're pretty open about everything. They know what I do to a certain degree, that they can mentally kind of take in. So talking about embalming doesn't really, they barely know how blood works in your body at that age. So, for me to explain all the embalming, they kind of look at me. So they do, though, to a certain degree. Otsego, Michigan, you're 15 minutes from me. Have you seen the diamonds made from cremains? I've never had anyone order one and seen one in person. I've had a lot of people share photos of them. So they're becoming a little more popular, more companies. You do have water cremation in St. Louis, Raymond. What's the name of the company here? I have it pulled up because I spoke to them recently, and because I'm going to come down there. But I have 1,500. Hughes Funeral Alternatives on South Grand Boulevard. So check them out. They have water cremation. Let's see. When it comes to what tips or advice would you give to someone going to school? Just learn everything you can. Good or bad, you're always learning. 25 years in the business, you're always learning. 30, 40 years in the business, you're always learning. Don't assume that once you graduate school, you're able to just do everything on your own. Everybody is so different to work with. Every family is so different. Every funeral home is so different. So you are always learning. Even if you have a horrible job at a funeral home, if you think they're terrible, it's not always about them. It's about you as well, that you may also be having problems as an employee. But you need to draw from that experience, the good and the bad, learn, grow, move on. Don't stay there and get yourself miserable even more and develop a negative view of funeral business in general, just from one bad experience. So always be learning, always be growing, and don't ever think it's just about them. What do I use to determine if a deceased is viewable or not? So many, like I need to just look at them and see what I can maybe do. I can see what parts of them are viewable. Can you guys hear my kids? They're having a battle royal upstairs, and I think they're really loud, but I hope you guys can't hear. Oh, Tiffany, that's awesome. So I had such a good experience. Tiffany's talking about some kids were walking through the funeral or through the cemetery because she works in the cemetery. And they were asking their mom about the headstones and stuff, and she was answering them. I had a funeral this week, was just biggest warm fuzzies you could ever get at a funeral. There's a whole bunch of little kids, and I love when there's little kids at funeral. I think it's so important. If you've watched any of my videos, you know kids at funerals are 120% yes to me. They need to experience things with their family. They need to know that when you hurt as a family, and you do hard together, and you're together to do things. But these kids were so sweet. And the little boy asked me to come home and go fishing with him after. I was like, that kid forever will think funeral directors are cool, hopefully, and will always have a good perception of going to a funeral. And to me, that's beyond anything. Hey, John in Jersey. Is it possible to become a funeral director without learning embalming? If I wanted to exclusively undertake the care of those seeking not to be embalmed? Sure, but you'd have to find a funeral home that only did natural. But you, as a funeral home, you have to be licensed, or you have to have the facility to embalm, because you may get a call to embalm. You may get a call to take care. There's a lot of places that are just cremation-based places, and they don't take natural burial calls. So it really just depends what you want to do. There's some states you can get where you're not licensed as an embalmer. You're just a funeral director, and you don't have to go to mortuary school to do that. Ohio is one of those. You just get a degree and you take your state test. Hey, everybody. A spooky story? I don't have any spooky stories, I don't think. Let me think on that. Let me see if I come up with a spooky. What do you think those that are dying feel in their final moments? I have no idea. That's one thing that I've never watched somebody die. I've never seen anybody die. None of my loved ones. I have no idea. I've never experienced that moment. So I have no idea what they're thinking or feeling. It's not my wheelhouse. When my mom passed in her final moments, she was peaceful and quiet. She just slowly stopped breathing. Her coloring when she passed was a very bright yellow. Her eyes were sunken and dark. She looked very gaunt overall. I was actually surprised by how yellow she was, and I was more surprised by how good she looked at her viewing. Could you share why people's colorings after they pass is so different? I'm assuming it was from her liver shutting down and dehydration. What skin color have you seen in the deceased, and how do you get the skin to look more normal? Are you ever able not to? I would guess any yellowing is going to be from definitely the yellow from your liver and, your kidneys, possibly like the build up of certain things in your system because you're super dehydrated and they get built up, and then your liver not working. So your body shuts down long before you die a lot of times. And that's what we find is we may get somebody who died an hour ago. Their body condition may look like they died 2 days ago, because of medications people are on and in different situations that parts of your body just die before the rest of you. We see it all the time. And so, typically if they were really yellow and then their coloring is good and we didn't need to do a lot, like the color flushed out essentially when we did the embalming, then it wasn't a long time jaundice that had basically stained the skin and it had washed out easily, which is what we hope for, because it makes our job a lot better to make the person's coloring better and such. So sometimes that jaundice cell can turn to green. It's just how chemicals react with the body sometimes. Sometimes you may get a gray color. If a person dies by, in the car, carbon monoxide, then you're going to get a bright red color. So depending on the cause of death, you might get different colors. Do cremations, do you ever get heavy black smoke? Our funeral home got fined by the county. If the person, like, depending on the if they're in a different type of casket maybe, and there's maybe stain on the casket or something like that, I would think that would maybe give off some different coloring. You might get something that's a little more toxic or something. But from a deceased just in a cardboard box, you typically aren't going to get something, and maybe some of their filtration wasn't working. I don't know, Fred. That's a good question. Thank you, Lori. Have you ever come across someone in mortuary school realize they cannot stomach embalming? Yes, and they drop out. So like our class started a little over 60 people. We graduated 40. Like there's a huge dropout rate. Just people can't handle maybe the body work. They can't handle maybe the coursework, or they realize it's just not the business for them. There's a lot of people go to mortuary school and have never had exposure to funeral home. That's why I stress so much. Do not sign up for mortuary school if you have never shadowed a funeral home. Get out there and shadow. If you need a shadow opportunity because you're trying to sign up for school, I have a huge group of students, and I say, or that are interested, pre-mortuary, I call them. I say, I'll help you try and set up a shadow. I have connections all over the country. I can connect with people to get you in, because what you see attending a funeral is like 10% of what we do as a funeral director. You think, oh, I want some warm and fuzzies and I want to help people all day. Okay, you have to make hundreds of phone calls. You have to work with community members. You have to wash cars. You got to care for bodies. You got to dust casket rooms. You have to make arrangements. You have to write obituaries. You have to do all this other stuff that's entailed in the job. It's not just that 10% warm and fuzzy that you may experience going to a funeral. So I want people to see the full gamut. I want people to see everything that we do as funeral directors before you go to school and invest money and everything. So that is so, so essential. Why do funeral services cost more in the United States than the rest of the world? I don't know, especially that they do. So that's a pretty broad statement to make. Have you ever seen a corpse smile or have a smirk when they're brought to you before embalming? Some people's natural look on their face is a smile. That's just how their face naturally sets. And yeah, sometimes there's the one-sided. Have you seen a people die when I worked? I've never seen anybody die. We embalmed right after a person died. Yeah, it is, Fred. I've talked about that before. Like when somebody's like super warm when you embalm, it's kind of weird. Like I almost want to, like if I cut, are they going to yell? Like I don't know. It makes you a little nervous just because they're so warm. My father-in-law wants to be buried in his military uniform from 30 years ago. There's no way it still fits. What do? Does cutting help? Brandon, it just depends where his weight is now. If it's in his belly, then yes, cutting you can do. But often you're gaining weight through up here, and this is where it's going to be tight. Even if you cut, you may not have enough material to cover the shoulder. So what we've done is say, let's display his uniform, and then we can bury it with him, where we put it on a mannequin, like a seamstress mannequin. So it sets right next to the casket, and have him dressed in something else, and then maybe lay it in over him, or, something like that. So it really depends on his build compared to how it was. What are your thoughts on the Peter Steffen situation? I don't even know what the Peter Steffen situation is. Peter Steffen. What is the Peter Steffen situation? Do I need to? Oh, there's a trooper killed. The trooper that was killed in October in Kokomo, Indiana. Is that what you're talking about? Fat give off black smoke when the heat is too hot. It could, because it's essentially grease. So it's a grease fire, and that can give off some black. Yeah, Fred, it's hard to even, you can't prepare anybody for seeing, you know, slit throats and limbs broken and, heads smashed and things like that. You don't encounter it often unless you work at a super high volume. And so, yeah, it's, you can't prepare for that. Chad says he's a funeral director who takes bodies from all walks of life, even people who are executed by the state. He recently came under fire for taking too many bodies from the state. I've particularly from COVID scenarios and did not have the proper storage to do so. Oh, in New York? Are you talking about New York? Worcester, the longtime Main Street mortician whose license was suspended in October after decaying bodies were found. I'll have to look into it and give you guys some feedback next week. So many stories go across in front of me that I don't delve into them, because when it comes to stories about funeral directors, I don't believe a lot unless I know firsthand things, because they're so skewed a lot of times. So until there's, innocent before proven guilty, until I know a lot of what's going on with the story, I can't dive into taking any sides on it. All right, gonna take one or two more things. Can a family member see a loved one being embalmed? And I mean, by law, no, because you need to be licensed to be in a preparation room. But some funeral directors will allow families, if they sign all the proper consents and stuff. I would want to know why. What are you hoping to accomplish by doing this? What is it you want to see? Sometimes they just want to be there when their loved one's bathed and then want to leave. So it's kind of one of those things, like, you need to know where the source or root of the question is coming from before you say yes or no. To me, that's the big deal, because they may not want to see the injection. They may not want to see all this other things. Sometimes maybe they just want to make sure their loved one's mouth looks right before they're embalmed, or they want to just be there when they're cleaned, or something. So it's having more of a conversation about it. Hey, Martha. Trevor says, my uncle's funeral was this last week and loved the Three Stooges. Oh, that's awesome. They photoshopped his face on one of the Three Stooges on the program and played a DVD of the Stooges on the TV. That was very cool. One more question. Whoever posts the next question, that'll be our last question. So I'm waiting. I'll give my husband props for his cold brew coffee. It's pretty good. He says that cold brew coffee thing was the best gift I've ever given him. So he's one of those people, like, he'll appreciate they gave him a gift, but he may not use everything I get him, hardly ever, even though they were the perfect gifts. But this cold brew coffee thing, he thinks is the best thing ever. So who knows? When a family chooses a full couch casket, does it increase the workload? Well, it depends on if they use the panel to cover the foot end or not. But yes, you have to then, make sure pants are straight and create, if it's a suit, you need to make, I know funeral directors who will use like a newspaper with a point and lay that under the pant so that the point of the seam on the pant is perfect, or tie a string from maybe the under the pant, from maybe the belt to the person's foot, so that point of the crease on the suit pant will lay perfectly up. So it's all about the presentation and things. So you definitely have to work with the lower half more than you would with a half couch where you're just working with the top half. So there's definitely a bit more work. It depends on the funeral director and how much time and energy they put in presentation, because I know some that will spend hours and hours and hours. I know some who don't spend a lot of time. Your family only uses full couch. Yeah, and I can tell you I've used one in my whole career. One. And that was only because we had to flip the person the other way because of trauma to their face. And so we were able to use a full couch in that situation. I could tell people around here that there's full couch caskets, and most of them have never heard of such a thing. It's just regional. It really is crazy that some regions, and there's no rhyme or reason. It's not like East Coast is one way and out West is one way, and it's not. It's just these pockets of areas that use one way or another. So crazy how that works. So, well, thank you guys. And I've just said so 100 times, I know. Go ahead and drop that comment and tell me to stop saying so. Thank you guys for joining. I hope you all have a great 4th of July. If I have time Friday, maybe I'll hop on for another live because I have so many questions this week. I only went through 2 of my like 8 pages of questions that I have from you. So maybe on Friday, we will jump on for another live video. I'm going to go wash lawn chairs now. What are you guys doing with your day? Huh? If you're not subscribed, subscribe to make sure you get notification on the next videos coming up. Have another video, every week you're going to get a 2-minute video on Tuesday. Right now you're getting a video on Sunday that I've done with a viewer where they get to ask me 3 questions. And then we have our live chat on Wednesday. And then a lot of weeks we have another video. That's 4 videos a week, which, what am I thinking? Setting some precedents for myself, some standards. So if you want to make sure to get notifications when those come out, you must subscribe, guys, and set up for notifications to be sent. If you find a video that's important to you, that resonates with you, share it. Share it with your family or post it on your Facebook and let people know, hey, I got a lot of information out of this. I have a video on making arrangements. So if you have family, if you have parents, if you're going to be going to a funeral home to make arrangements for somebody, check out that video to get prepared. There's an arrangement workbook you can get along with that. So you can go to my website to get for that. The website also has merchandise. It has my You Don't Know What You Don't Know, which I say a lot. It has mugs if you want a coffee with Kari mugs. So check things out, guys. Jump on in. Welcome if it's your first week, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.